So this is kind of a more of an opportunity to talk about some of the bigger moves that happened. And again, it's a continuation of just some of my thoughts. It's nothing like crazy. I don't have player and person ain't on this. This is just some of the guys who I think are have some pressure, if you will. Just the rest of the season in terms of expectations for them. These are guys I was just thinking about this past like week and a half. Wanted to share. I thought it was interesting stuff. If you got more people that y'all think are under more pressure, let me know in the comments. Y'all know me. I'm always down for a conversation. But I know a lot of people wanted to talk about a bigger picture of Russ on the Clippers. And so let's start with that. So it's very simple. Not a ton of players on it, not a ton of teams on it, because I didn't want this to take forever and have y'all here all night. But there's a couple of teams and stuff that I had thoughts about. Some teams, some players you can see, it's a lot of Western Conference stuff that just was on my mind. And the first team I want to talk about is the Clippers. I think the Clippers as an organization are under a lot of pressure. So you made this move for Russ. You signed him. We'll talk about how Russ fits into this in a second, but I think he is a really, really good fit. But when I look at Paul George and Kawhi, they both have player options for their 24-25 seasons. So they have the rest of this season under contract, and they have next season under contract. And then the year after that, they both have player options. The reason I say the Clippers are under a lot of pressure is because this postseason, whatever happens this postseason, can be a big factor. And both, either if Kawhi and Paul George, decide if they want to sign some sort of extension, if the Clippers themselves want to offer some sort of extension to both of these guys. And I think there might be some more pressure on Paul George than Kawhi, because Kawhi has the championships, the MVPs, he's more of a made man, if you will. And I don't even actually honestly know if there's that much pressure on Paul George, because I don't think we're looking for Paul George to cement himself this new legacy. Like, I think we know who Paul George is at this point. But I think just the pressure on the Clippers to figure out, is this going to work? Do we, offer an extension to these guys? If we even offer them extension, do they want to stay here? Do they believe in this organization? Because hey, if this goes south again in the playoffs, the Clippers easily could be like, Kawhi and Paul George could easily be like one of the two could say this Clippers organization isn't going to put a team around us that can win a championship. Now, there are a lot of details in this. There's some onus on Paul George and Kawhi, because as we all know, these past basically 3 playoff runs, both of them haven't, either one of them or both of them have been injured for the past 3 playoff runs. So you're obviously not going to win a championship if one of your 2 best players aren't on the court, but it all goes into it at the same time. It could be like, hey, well, we tried it here. It ain't worked. We couldn't be healthy. It's time for one of us to move on. The Clippers could say, we tried it. It ain't worked. Y'all wasn't healthy. It's time for us to move on. We're not offering you. So I think just the organization as a whole, once again, to me, is one of the, when I think about organizations and players with pressure, a lot of pressure is on the Clippers organization as a whole. Now, on the flip side of things, I think there's some pressure on Russ. I don't think there's a ton of pressure on Russell Westbrook, but I do think there is some. The reason there's not a ton of pressure is because, honestly, we talked about this in the Discord. The Clippers don't have to play him. If it ain't fitting, if it ain't working, we looked at it earlier. He's only making $700,000 to end the rest of this season. Like, they don't got a lot of money in on him. The Lakers had to play Russ because they was paying him $40 million. Like, it's not like you're not going to play him. But they don't have to play him. But all that being said, so far, and it's only been one game. It was one of the highest scoring games in NBA history. But so far, what we've seen from Russ and what I thought Russ could bring to this team was, honestly, same thing I thought John Wall could bring, so I could be wrong, is playmaking. This Clippers organization, this Clippers team has needed a good playmaker. And Russ did that in his debut game with 14 assists, and he didn't even play none of the overtime because he fouled out, unfortunately, in the fourth. So he could have ended with more assists. We don't know. But I like what I've seen so far from him. And the reason I say he does have some pressure and, but not the most pressure or not none at all, is because teams are going to be looking to see how the rest of these 20 games go. If it goes well, the Clippers might say, hey, this worked out perfectly. We'd love to give you a home here. Here's a contract offer in the summer. Or it could be another team being like, okay, we see, because I think the last season and a half with the Lakers is really ingrained in a lot of NBA fans and just, I think, even some GMs and front offices' minds. So if Russ can, reprove to the NBA in these 20 some odd games that, hey, I'm still a very valuable piece to a team that's trying to make a deep playoff push, and, seeing how he plays with the Clippers. So there's some pressure there, but not the most, because I do think he's going to play at least well enough to get, another opportunity to play somewhere else. It just really depends what that money looking like on that next contract. That's why, to me, there's some pressure, but not like the most pressure. Funny, sleazy. So I didn't put Jokic on here, but I was going to talk about him when we talk about Embiid. So I'll say what was going to say about Jokic, and then I'll tell you where I have Embiid in the Sixers. We'll just segue into that because people love to talk about the two centers at the same time. Jokic isn't on my list at all when it comes to pressure. And this is, I guess, kind of why, because if I'm going to be consistent about myself and be consistent how I talk about basketball, one of the conversations we have when we're talking about Embiid, and we'll get to the second, is the fact that he hasn't come close to an Eastern Conference Finals yet. He's been second round exit, second round exit, second round exit. My wife makes fun of my Sixers all the time for that because of that. But one of the things that I've heard a lot of people say about Jokic recently is Jokic is the most pressure to make it to the finals. If he gets there with a third MVP and doesn't, I'm pushing some nasty narratives. A lot of people have been saying that, like, Jokic needs to see more playoff success. But I think a lot of people forget that Jokic and the Nuggets, it was the bubble, right? But they went to the Western Conference Finals. In 2020, they were at the Western Conference Finals. Now, yes, has he won two Finals MVP? Two MVPs since then, or maybe expectations risen a little bit. But him and his team still went to the Western Conference Finals on a very impressive run. I want to say at least one, if not both of those, were 3-1 comebacks on the way to the Western Conference Finals. Like, teams were just folding against them, and they were having some amazing comebacks. So they've been to the Western Conference Finals. They've had some playoff success. Now, did they go and win the championship? No, but that was also the year they went up against a really good Lakers team, and Anthony Davis playing out of his mind. So they lost to the Lakers in the bubble. Now, the reason I say me personally, and now this is where I think it gets a little, I think the discourse gets a little weird between NBA fans, because it was the bubble that he went to the Western Conference Finals in. It depends on how you view the bubble, because now this is forcing, I think, a lot of fans to find a conflict within themselves, where some people still to this day be like, oh, what was the bubble? It was a Mickey Mouse ring, talking about the Lakers and whatever. But then when they want to defend Jokic and his playoff legacy, because you can make that argument, Sleazy, which is a valid argument, that in at least the 2 seasons where he was Finals MVP, there wasn't much playoff success. 2 seasons where he was regular season MVP, there was not much playoff success, but he also did not have his team. So I do think I don't think a ton of pressure on Jokic and the Nuggets for this season. That's why they didn't make this list, but it is a situation I'm personally going to be keeping an eye on. But I've also seen this team make it to in Western Conference Finals. So I know a lot of people are having this conversation in this discourse over the last couple of weeks. You're not the first person I've seen say it. You're the first person in the chat, so we're talking about it, Sleazy. But you're not the first person to see say it. But the reason Jokic is not on this list for me, because him and his team have proven it, to me at least, because I respect the bubble. Now, if you don't respect the bubble, then it is a different conversation. Then you are saying, well, he's never made the Western Conference Finals. You got to say it in quotation marks, because technically he was there, but you say it was the bubble, right? So I think it's just a cool moment. One, because it's something else that happened in the bubble that I think people just forget about. And two, I think there are legit fans who defend the fact that Jokic made it to the Western Conference Finals, but also call it a Mickey Mouse ring. And it was the same run. So I don't know. Interesting thoughts to me. The Nuggets and Jokic don't have as much pressure as, and let's go ahead and get into it, continued on with the tier list. I'm giving Embiid and the Sixers a lot of pressure. I'm putting Embiid specifically here because I think a lot of the pressure, of course, the Sixers rise and falls with how well Embiid is playing. I know a lot of people have different opinions on the Sixers roster and how they allocate their money. I'm looking at you, Tobias Harris. I've heard a lot of rumors over the last couple of weeks of, apparently there's still talks of James Harden wants to go back to, or could potentially go back to Houston. I ain't gonna lie to you. I don't know what he would see in Houston, why he would be going back to Houston. I don't see the benefit for it. But this is now the second time in this regular season we've heard it. Now, to be honest with you, both times have not really been from sources that I know that well, if I'm keeping it a B. But the pages that like reposted it are pages I get a lot of information from. So it's kind of like the primary source I don't really know that well, but the secondary source, we usually sharing viable information. So something to keep an eye on. But for me, like we talked about when we talked about Jokic, no, the Sixers have not made it past the Eastern Conference second round yet. I think this is a year that we have one of the best rosters we've ever had. And I think the goal for the Sixers, to me, is the Eastern Conference. I'm thinking saying the Sixers have the type of roster that can go to the finals. A lot of people calling me crazy for it. It's, perfectly fine. You can say it's fandom. It's cool with me. At worst, I want to see Eastern Conference Finals, but I do think we got a roster that could go to the NBA Finals. The only way I will not be like, yo, I'm completely like y'all got to watch out for me and make sure I'm all right if we go out in the second round. As if it's like a game 7 and beating Giannis is battling, going back and forth and having an amazing game, and we lose off like a very, very close game 7 and Sixers played perfect basketball and the Bucks just happen to outplay us. That is the only way I will be okay with a second round exit against the Milwaukee Bucks and everybody's healthy there, playing amazing. That's the only way I'd be okay with it. Other than that, to me, it's like we need to make it to the finals. We need to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's the expectations that I have on the Sixers, and I think that's the expectations that a lot of people have because a lot of people have been talking about the Sixers for years. The Sixers have been one of the teams that's been kind of like in the mix. I'll put that up in quotation marks for the last couple of years. That a lot of people is like right there and maybe that second tier of teams in the Eastern Conference, but everybody's wondering if they can move into that first tier of teams in the East. And that comes with playoff success. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. The Clippers, we talked about it, beating my Sixers. Let's talk about these Suns real quick. So I got the Suns in different spots because I got the Suns as a whole. We got KD because he just moved there, and we can talk about Chris Paul. I feel like that's just been a big conversation that's been on my mind lately. I'm going to put Chris Paul under immense amount of pressure. I like low-key might put Chris Paul here for a couple of reasons. Chris, listen to me, Chris. This might be your opportunity. This might be your last chance to win a chip. It might be your last real chance to win a chip. Because now, I don't know how truthful it is, right? We'll see what happens because it depends how y'all do in the playoffs. But I'm hearing rumors left and right. I'm seeing reports almost every other day talking about there's a world where Kyrie can go to the Suns in this summer. And that we all know if Kyrie goes there, that means you getting packed up, you getting shipped out, and who knows where you're going to end up. Y'all going to have, who know, Kevin Durant's still injured, of course. We all know this. I'll be honest, I don't know when he coming back off the top of my head. We got about 20-some odd games left. As long as he back by playoffs, y'all could make something happen. Now, is it going to be all smooth, easy, whatever? Obviously not. You got to figure out how to integrate him into the offense. But it shouldn't be that hard to integrate a dude who's scoring 30 on almost 50, 40, 90 splits. Like, that shouldn't be impossible to integrate into your offense. So y'all going to have to make that work. We call you the point guard, Chris. You're going to have to be the point guard. But the reason he's under the most pressure is because, like I said, if they decide to ship him out, this could be his last opportunity to win a championship. I want Chris Paul to win a championship in his career so bad. I think like that's honestly the only knock on his career in terms of when people go to rank him all time and ranking him amongst other all-time great point guards. The only downside you can say is his playoff success. He doesn't have a championship yet. This is the best opportunity for him. This relieves a lot of the scoring pressure. We just need you to go out there, and be the best point guard you can. Child. We just need him to go out there and be the best point guard he can be in the playoffs. Chris, you're under a lot of pressure, but I wish you the best of luck. Continuing on with the Suns. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, KD and the Suns, though, because people have been talking about that, and that's why I made him there. To me, they're under no pressure at all. Kevin Durant is locked up on this roster until, when did I put down? 2026, Kevin Durant's under contract until. And so he going to be here. So, and he's coming off an injury. So the Suns as an organization to me is going to be like, KD, we would love to have you back. We want you here back in time for the playoffs. But it's also like, well, we're not going to say go crazy because you don't want to make this injury any worse. We got plenty of time. You're going to be here for years. Ayton's under contract till 2026. Booker's under contract until 2028. That's our big three. That's the future. Like, that legit is the future. And then we already know there's a world where we might get Kyrie instead of Chris Paul. So for the Suns and Kevin Durant themselves, no. To me, there is absolutely no pressure. And to be honest with you, at this point, we all been saying for a while, are they going to move DeAndre Ayton? Are they going to move DeAndre Ayton? It's just been this elephant in the room almost all season long. Do you need to move him now? Like, I mean, we can make this work. I think DeAndre Ayton, it's a mentality thing for him. It really, really is. It's a mentality thing to turn into this, what I think could be this great two-way defensive rim running big that if he buys into that style of play, could fit so well on his team and look like legit one of the best bigs in the league. But so often DeAndre isn't as aggressive as we would like him to be. He wants to get the ball in the post and have more post-ups from time to time. I don't know if that's necessarily the way that the Suns want to play basketball, but that seems to be the way he wants to play basketball. But when games where he's buying in and just dominant and rebounded and finishing well around the rim, he looks great and he fits. But sometimes games where he wants the ball, wants to post up, he can kind of slow it down, make it look a little clunky. I'm very curious to see what Monty Williams decides to do and how he decides to integrate Kevin Durant into the system. But once again, it ain't much pressure here to me. It really ain't. All right, continuing on with the tier list. This Siakam one did surprise me, but continuing on the tier list. I'm going to talk about the Kings. The Kings as a whole, I'm going to put them in a lot of pressure, and I'm going to tell you why. It's just not hate to the Kings. I love what they've been doing all season. I thought, like I said, in that close game, that crazy 176, the one whatever game, I thought the Clippers were going to win when I tuned into the fourth quarter. And the Kings have shown, and this was actually the Kings coming off of another close win the night before. That was off of a back-to-back, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember who they played the night before. Okay, yeah, it was a back-to-back. I'm not tripping, yeah, because they did just I thought they beat the Trailblazers on Thursday, and then they had that crazy double overtime game against the Clippers, so that was a back-to-back. And they ended up winning both games, so shout out to them. Right now, going up against the Kings. Going up against the Thunder. But my point here with the Kings is y'all are the third seed in the West. A lot of these teams made moves to get better. We're looking at the Suns. We're looking at the Clippers. We're looking at the Mavericks. All three of those teams that are right on your heel when we look at it. The Kings are right here at 34-25. The Suns are 33-29. The Clippers 33-29. 32-30 from the Mavs. But all three of these teams did something that they believe, can make them better. And all three of those teams, I think, you're gonna have a target on your back, is what I'm saying, Kings. So I think there's a world where y'all might even be able to just keep the 4 seed. But I would love for y'all to surprise me and keep that 3 seed. Do I think it's going to happen? I'm going to be honest, Kings fans, no. I do not think the Kings are going to keep the 3 seed. Would I be very pleased and love to see it? Of course. I'm not a hater. I just don't think it will happen. I would love to see y'all keep at least the 4. I don't want to see y'all slide all the way down to the 5. I just think it would be a little demoralizing almost going into the playoffs, considering how long and for how many weeks have y'all had the 3 seed for a little bit that I've gotten used to seeing y'all up there. But y'all are under, to me, a great amount of pressure to keep at least the 4 seed. At least the 4 seed, Kings fans. I guess it's relative pressure, right? Look at it this way. That's an excellent question, Range. The Kings have pressure because of the storyline of just where they are, fought hard all season. They're the 3 seed. Beautiful playoff story, putting this playoff drought to bed. I would love to see them finish high. The Suns don't have as much pressure as a whole, to me, because the Suns' big move was landing Kevin Durant. The Suns are going to be title contenders for the next 3 seasons, as long as Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are on the team together. And the fact that Kevin Durant's still not back from the injury is why they don't have as much pressure. In terms of the grand scheme of pressure, sure. Yeah, the Suns the Suns have more pressure than the Kings do because the Suns are trying to win the championship. But in terms of just this microcosm in this moment and just honestly having some fun talking about basketball, the Kings have pressure because I want to see them not fall all the way to like the 5-6 seed, which I think is possible in a weird world with the other teams trying to get better. That's all. See, I completely disagree because what the Suns' big move isn't just for this season. The Suns' big move was for the next couple of seasons. And I'm not even saying the Kings are frauds or anything like that. I'm just, the pressure is on the Kings to keep their 3 spot because I'm sure the Kings would love to have home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. If they drop to the 5 seed, that's no longer a thing. I'm sure they would love to have that. So if they can keep that, that's some pressure there. And I like that for them. I like to see what this young team can do because I think this is a team who, for the most part this season, I don't want to say surprised a lot of people, but never mind. I can say surprised. I don't think any, if I go back and look, I doubt I will see any video or, article from Bleacher Report, Ringer, whoever that had the Kings as a 3 seed going into the season. I seriously doubt that. So yes, they did surprise everybody, but I'm sure they would love to be able to keep that momentum going and at least have home court advantage in the first round. That's just me though. Last 2 spots we have on this little, who has the most pressure thing that we've been talking about. I just have the Mavericks and Kyrie. Ironically, I want to say I put the Mavericks under some pressure. Not necessarily the most pressure in the world, but I would... Mavericks are under pressure. I'm going to switch it. Audible. I wrote down some pressure, but I'm writing that making Audible, putting them to just stay under a lot of pressure as an organization, more so like the front office is under pressure in the Dallas Mavericks case. Not necessarily the team, but the front office. For a while, everyone's been saying, we said this, I think, when the trade happened, that I was one of the few people who was like, Luka's still in a contract. He's still young. I don't think he's running nowhere. Everybody's telling me he could go somewhere. He might leave. And then they make the trade for Kyrie. They give up some picks for it. They give up some defense and Dorian Finney-Smith. So it was a little bit of a risk, especially considering Kyrie can just go ahead and walk at the end of this summer. And honestly, the free agent class this summer ain't really crazy. So there is pressure on the Dallas Mavericks to front office, I guess, to hope this works out on the court, because at this point and at this stage of the game, the front office did all they could do. There's no other move that they can make before the end of the season to make this work. They did it. They traded for Kyrie. They didn't make any other moves afterwards, really. I thought they were going to make another supplemental move to maybe get some defense on this team, because as we've seen already in the first couple of games they play together, this team does need and misses some defense. So you run the risk, I guess, of losing Kyrie, and then you've traded away those draft picks for nothing, if you will. But you still have proven to Luka that we're willing to make moves. We just apparently made the wrong one. So it's a catch-22 there. And then there's still the pressure of, well, if this doesn't work out, Luka could demand a trade in a year or two. We never know. So to me, the Mavericks are under a lot of pressure. But then this flip side of things, honestly, Kyrie, for very similar reasons to Kevin Durant, but different, no pressure at all to make it work in Dallas. And to me, this is why. Yes, did he have all the crazy off court stuff? You know what I mean? Not being able to play, having to go through the My Career storyline side quest. If you know, you know. My point is, Kyrie has done enough this season to have proven that Kyrie is Kyrie, that he is nice. The numbers that he's put up all season have been absolutely phenomenal. He's proven that, to me at least, he's proven that someone's going to sign him. Regardless at this point of whatever you think of his off-court stuff, whatever you think of that, it is what it is. It's a world where somebody's going to sign him. We've already talked about the Suns' interest. Of course, I'm sure there's some sort of Lakers interest this summer. But Kyrie doesn't have any pressure because the Mavericks got to convince him to stay at this point. Like, between the way how Luka and him play together in these playoffs and finish out the regular season, how deep they go to playoffs, they got to come to a mutual decision of like, well, do we want to sign Kyrie? And if we do want to sign Kyrie, does Kyrie want to stay? Kyrie holds all the cards to me, because unless there's a world where he just really loves Luka and wants to play with Luka and the Mavericks don't want to sign him, which if Kyrie wants to stay, I don't know why you don't sign him. But Kyrie has options. He can go wherever he wants. So I don't think it's that big of a deal or that much pressure for Kyrie. But I see a lot of pressure for the Mavs. So once again, don't think too deep into this. Take this all with a grain of salt. These are just guys who was on my mind over the last couple of days. I wanted to put a tier list together, hang out with y'all on stream. And this is kind of what I put together. Most pressure, some pressure, no pressure at all. We might do this more often, as I just have guys and thoughts, because it's just a method to get the juices going. If you feel like I have somebody else, I missed somebody, let me know that in the comments for sure. But yeah, that's my tier list.